everyone, I'm Ashley. I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm also a wife, a mom, a therapist, and a grief educator. Around here, we talk about grief, faith, and healing and how they meet in real life. I thought the best way to start this channel was to share my own journey, the grief experience that led me to Jesus and shaped everything I do here. So we're going to go back to August of 2014. I'm entering my sophomore year of college, and I was super excited for this year because I thought, finally, I have access to all the things that are going to make me feel truly happy and fulfilled. I'm living in my sorority house. I'm lining up internships, making memories with friends, engaging in hookup culture. I mean, from the world's standards, I'm living the idyllic college life. So it was confusing to me when, as the year went on, I didn't feel more fulfilled, but I actually felt more empty. Every party, every hookup, it wasn't making me happier. What was I doing wrong? By the end of that first semester, I felt discouraged, to say the least. I figured I just needed the winter break to recoup. I'd go back for my second semester and things would feel different. Fast forward, things didn't feel different. And that's going to bring us to Friday, March 27th, 2015. One of my friends and I are taking an afternoon nap before figuring out where we were going to party that night. Still chasing that high. As I'm getting up, I roll over to grab my phone off the floor and I see 20 missed calls and texts from one of my brothers. Immediately, my heart sank like I knew something awful had happened. And the text just said line by line, Ashley, Ashley, Ashley. And the last one said, Ashley, mom's dead. I feel my body go numb as I roll out of bed and sit on the floor. I look up at my friend in her bed and I think I just said something like, my mom died. Completely in shock and disbelief. I call my brother back and my grandmother answers, and I think I just said, no, she's not. And she just said, I'm sorry, sweetie, she's gone. In the months that followed, my grief manifested as confusion, anger, and a lot of fear. One way I tried to control my fear was by controlling everything. I had just had this experience of tragic loss that really shoved the reality in my face that I had no control. But I doubled down. And I was still chasing that high back at school. I'm still partying, I'm still engaging in hookup culture, and I still feel empty. And on top of that, I'm also getting high as often as possible because it was just too painful to feel my grief. I think something that also happens when faced with the reality of mortality, especially in such a sudden way, you don't just know it can happen again, but you almost start to anticipate it. Some mornings I'd walk downstairs in my house and just feel a pit in my stomach if I saw my dad asleep on the couch. I'd pause and wonder, is he still breathing? Am I gonna lose him too? I was always afraid, and I desperately wanted to be less afraid. But I couldn't undo my mom's death, and I couldn't undo the reality of death itself. Up until that point, I'd grown up culturally Catholic. I believed in God, vaguely, but I didn't really know what he was like. I for sure thought he was a fun sucker. He definitely wouldn't approve what I had been up to at college. And after my mom died, I thought, well, if he did exist, he must not care. About 5 months after my mom died, I sat with someone who was also grieving her death. This person was a Christian, and after talking about how much they missed my mom, they said something along the lines of, but I still trust God. What? I think I just felt a rush of anger, and I looked at them and said, but he took her from us. They were adamant that this was not the case, and then I just dropped it. And that conversation just stuck in my head, playing over and over again for the next couple of days. What if God wasn't the God I thought he was? What if he was different? One night, I find myself in bed crying. Again, I'd been getting high so often that I actually built up a tolerance and couldn't numb like I could before. So the feeling of those 5 months of suppressed grief just flooded. I was supposed to be going back to school in just a couple of weeks, but if I couldn't keep it together at home, how was I supposed to function at school? So, as I was crying in bed, I literally looked up at the ceiling and whispered, God, if you're real, I need to know, because I can't do this anymore. And what happened next is hard to put into words, but I'm gonna do my best. Suddenly, I felt this physical sensation of warmth come over my body. The way I would explain it now that I just didn't have language for back then was that the Holy Spirit fell on me. I was still sobbing, but the tears felt different because in that moment, I wasn't just experiencing sorrow, but I was also experiencing the joy of meeting Jesus for the first time. I can only explain it as something supernatural because also in that moment, I just seemed to have this new understanding of God. Not as a distant God who didn't care, but of a God who loved me. And I felt so loved in that moment. And also of a God who actually grieved with me. My honest first thought when all of this happened was, oh shoot, I didn't actually expect anything to happen. And I want to make it clear that that moment didn't erase all the loss. It wasn't like grief healed, check mark. But it changed what the loss meant. I had hoped that death wasn't the end of the story. And I wish I could say that that night I just fully gave my life to Jesus, started following him with my whole heart, but that is far from the truth. The love I felt that night was physical and tangible, and I honestly expected that the spiritual high was just like my new baseline moving forward. But what do you do when the spiritual high fades? That's a whole other story that I'll share with you in the next video. And if you're looking for honest conversations about faith, grief, and healing, please take a moment to like this video and hit the subscribe button.